welcome everybody. My name is Kathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers. This is called Meet the Career Advice from a Pros. We've been doing this for many, many years now, and now they're on YouTube, so they're not hidden. And what it is I just always feel like, if people are considering joining the Photo Managers or just want to know about it, or we have many members that join these calls as well because they love to get to know more about their peers. I always ask the same 5 questions. And you can go hear back from members from different parts of the world, families, people that have been families, people in retirement, professional photographers, all the different backgrounds. It's incredible, the skills and backgrounds that people come from that join the Photo Managers and do this for a living. Peter is one of those folks. He has been a longtime member. He'll tell you in a minute probably how long, and his amazing background in the photography industry and how he found his way to us. He's a wonderful member in the community, answers lots of questions, has earned our Rising Tide Award. He creates a lot of courses and now has really become very passionate about the legacy space. And so he can tell you about that as well. And so, Peter, introduce yourselves, tell us a little about your background, then we'll jump into the questions.
Thanks, Kathy. I think before we get started, it is Kathy's birthday today. So I think maybe just take a few seconds to unmute and I'll wish Kathy a happy birthday.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday. Thank you, everybody. It's a good day to be. It's a beautiful sunny day. Thanks, Peter.
So what was the question?
Oh, I was good. Well, introduce yourself. Tell us about your background and how you found the Photo Managers.
Well, I am living here in Los Angeles, but I'm originally from New York, and I always call myself a New Yorker. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my photography background because it really informs kind of what I do today and how I got here. I started out, my father was a photographer, a cinematographer, film editor. My maternal grandfather was a studio photographer in Brighton Beach. My paternal grandfather was an artist in Germany. My uncle was an artist and advertising executive on Madison Avenue. So of course I chose a career in music. That didn't go as well. At some point, I decided I didn't want to be a starving musician. So, but a starving photographer seemed like a good option. So I pursued that. And I was living in San Francisco at the time. And I always loved photojournalism because it told stories and it could really kind of inform people. And my heroes were like, Dorothea Lange and Margaret Bourke-White and Elliot Erwitt and Cartier-Bresson and all these amazing photographers that I was surrounded by, books in my parents' home and so forth. And I started a very small local newspaper in San Francisco, but it was a great kind of little training ground. And I used to buy my film. I lived across the street from a camera store run by Harvey Milk, who was, the very famous activist in San Francisco. So I used to buy my film from Harvey, and then I would develop it and print it. They had these public darkrooms in San Francisco, and I loved everything about it. And as I progressed, I was always kind of trying to work in photojournalism, but I ended up working for a photographer, an advertising photographer in New York, a guy named Steve Krongard, and that's where I know Rob from. He was working for Pete Turner, who was a very famous and successful advertising photographer in New York. And I really learned the skill there that I think kind of set me on the path to do anything, which was to be a problem solver. In other words, you think a photographer, they of course learn their skill, but the biggest skill they have is to be a problem solver. And because every job is different, just like what we do. And that really kind of informed my kind of path. Was whatever I was going to do, it's always about problem solving. And we used to do slide duping, and Rob knows this. We used to have this thing called a repronar where we photograph stuff on Kodachrome slides, and then on this repronar, it was like basically a camera scanning setup, and the camera would photograph the Kodachrome slides, and we'd create dupes that way and create special effects. But it really is now with camera scanning that I do. I realized I was doing this back in the 80s, but it was film to film. And, so the technologies change, but the skills kind of
The Russian one.
run through the different kind of,
Went to a
paths
third.
that we take. And I'll kind of get into that in a minute. Eventually I ended up starting a photo agency, a stock photo agency, and it was a digital agency. This was in the late 90s. And I represented my work, which was mostly travel photography, and I represented other photographers' work. And what I really needed to do
Can I just,
was,
hey, Peter, let me just stop you a minute. Everybody make sure you're on mute. I'm trying to make sure that I'm muting everybody, but there's a little feedback.
yeah.
And so somebody, maybe when we said happy birthday, people forgot to go back on mute. So again, take a look at your microphone and put yourself back on mute. Okay, go ahead.
So running this stock photo agency all digitally, I was really forced to learn how to organize large groups of digital images. It was, you cannot afford to be unorganized when you're running an agency like that, because you need to find things because people want certain subjects. You need to be able to, do quick searches. So I became very adept at keyword tagging and metadata and just really all the tech stuff around digital imaging. I had worked in Photoshop from like Photoshop 2.0, so I was comfortable with digital imaging. But now it was critical that I become really well versed in it, and I think that really enabled me down the road, because what I looked at was I saw that the digital files, the professional files, were perfectly organized, but I looked at my family stuff and it was a mess. And it was somewhere around 2012 that I kind of started to understand that there is a possible career path with working with personal and family photos. And I kind of created a whole seminar that I was going to go out and do, and then life intervened and all this stuff happened. I kind of put it on the shelf until about 2015, 2016. And I was talking to Cheryl, who used to be Cheryl Pickerel, and now we all know Cheryl in the Photo Managers. And we were old colleagues, and she told me that she had joined what was then APO, which was the Association of Professional Picture Organizers.
The Association of Personal Photo Organizers.
Personal photo. And I was like, oh my God, like, this was something I wanted to do a few years ago. And I think I joined that afternoon and sent you an email. I was so excited because it was like, yes, I wasn't crazy. This is something that we can do. But, early on, I would tell people what I was doing. My wife, who was my girlfriend then, just couldn't figure out why anybody would pay anybody to be a photo organizer. But of course, now we know that is certainly not the case. And so that was in 2016, and I've been kind of on this path since then, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Sorry for the long answer, but it's kind of how I got here.
No, I mean, it's an amazing, one of the biggest joys I get from running the organization is the backgrounds of the people that we meet. And Cheryl, like you just mentioned, I just was speaking with her yesterday about something, but that people meet each other from different backgrounds. So,
Yeah.
so I always told people, I always ask the same 5 questions. So to just kind of keep it specific. So,
Sure.
you've given us your background on how you came to us, but so first one people I think always wonder is, well, how do you find clients? So how have you found your clients, and how do you continue to find your clients?
Yeah, this is obviously the challenge. And you remember when we were originally doing, photo organizing back in the day, the advice was like, do everything, learn as much as you can. And I think you quickly said, I think we need to pivot. And I think when we focus on skills that we are proficient at, have confidence in, we can use that to market ourselves, because it becomes easier to identify what we're doing and put it out into the world. Now, I think originally just set up a website. I'd always had websites, so I was fairly comfortable doing that. And I set up a website and just, threw everything up on there. And back in the day, there wasn't much competition. So I still get a lot of traffic on my website, but that's how I got my first client, who just found me and through my website. And if you remember the old director Otto Preminger, this was his nephew and his family. And they wanted me to scan thousands of prints. So I was like scanning pictures of Marilyn Monroe and Ernest Hemingway. And I was like, this is amazing. This is the craziest job I've ever had. And then I organized their stuff, and it was on a Windows machine, which was totally out of my comfort zone. But I did it using Picasa back in the day. And then the funny part, or not so funny, is I finished everything. It'd been months there. I'm walking out of their beautiful home up in Brentwood. We're literally at the white picket fence saying goodbye. And the husband leans out and says, "There's a guy from Microsoft that says we've been hacked." And my stomach just dropped, because I thought, oh my God, what have I done? My first job, and I'm like ruined forever. Turned out to be one of those scammers who was like trying to convince them that they needed their service. It wasn't Microsoft, but that was my first job. And then from there, it became pretty much a referral situation where, there's this guy, he does this. People ask, hey, I've got these photos. I need this, who does it? Oh, I have this guy. And that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. That the referrals and the word of mouth becomes a significant part of your business once you get started, right? And I think we tell people often, setting up getting that website going, getting getting the word out there, doing presentations at your local library or at your, community centers, and kind of becoming known as doing setting up booths at, different fairs and things like that. There's just so many different ways. So another question I love to ask is, well, what is it that you love most about what you do?
I think I love the right brain, left brain aspect of it. In other words, it's a great profession because it incorporates a lot of creative thinking. And yet I like the technology aspect of it as well. And it all kind of plugs into that problem solving skill that I talked about. So I like being able to, I love history. I love being able to kind of explore history, my own, other families. And yet I like the challenges of technology and how we try to integrate that. And, there is, I think, a tendency of people who come into our field being overwhelmed and thinking, I have to learn it all. I have to learn all the new technology. I have to stay up to date on all the technology. And it's just too much. And I've been working, like I say, since Photoshop 2.0. You never learn it. And as soon as you do, you have to keep learning more. And if with all the different, platforms and apps and stuff that we use, there's no way to be able to do that. So I believe, again, it comes down to problem solving. If you can learn how to use software and learn the practical aspects of what they are able to do, what you can then do is find out what the right tool is for the right job. And because we have this community where we can literally go onto a platform and go, hey, what did you use? Oh, I used this, it was great, and I used that, and it was really terrific, or this one stinks, whatever. And then we can just kind of explore that when we need to and learn what we need to when we need to do the job. So it's learning what needs to be done to do the job most efficiently and effectively. and then finding the right tool. And then when we have the confidence and the skill and the experience, we can just pick up these tools and these software and these platforms and learn them pretty quickly. So it really doesn't necessitate learning everything. You'll lose your mind. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there, because that's one of the things I always see newcomers worry about, is how much they have to learn. And what they really do is just need to develop confidence and experience and trust the process.
Yeah, we talk about that in our new member orientation now. We the whole thing is about, and learn what you need to when you need it, and then know there's a community behind you that will help you, that you're not alone. Like, we know Apple's going to be coming out with some major changes. We already have a webinar scheduled for our member community in early November, like how to manage all the changes that Apple has just come out with. So you're in a community where we're paying attention, and you're only one step ahead of you're one step ahead of your client for the most part. They're not paying attention. They don't know all these changes are coming, right? And I love Peter's advice always about being a problem solver. I think you've used that quite a bit, and really that ability to just slow down, think it through. And so, so the next question I always ask, though, is then what don't you like about your job? Because, there's plus and minuses to everything that we do, and everybody has different experiences with that. But what would you say is the thing that is the least favorite part of what you do?
I was thinking about that question this morning. I hate paying the bills. And I'm not a big fan of bookkeeping.
Yeah.
But when I sit down and do it, I kind of enjoy it to some extent. Sometimes, and this just kind of popping into my head, I think, and this isn't it's not what I don't like. It's one of the more frustrating areas, and it centers around communication. So because we work in this field that does require a certain amount of technological, understanding on our part, but also trying to impart that upon our clients and trying to communicate that to our clients. And, when I have a client who is savvy or is at least open-minded to learn, I love it, because there's a sense of like their willingness to learn and going, I don't know this stuff, but I can learn it, or I can learn what I can. And then my skill is trying to communicate that to that client. But I do have some clients who just have such a closed mind about this stuff. And it becomes very frustrating to communicate it, because they almost get upset trying to kind of understand certain basic technological things that they need to learn. And it's like, there's no way around it. You do need to learn it. So when I come up against people who are closed-minded, it makes the job so much harder. And it requires a skill that sometimes even doesn't do the job, because, in the end, they're so closed-minded, and they get so, just kind of tight around this stuff. That's a little frustrating, especially when you spent like just days, weeks, months on a job, and it's like, here it is, and they're just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. What is this? What is that? And, it's like, you just kind of like, okay, we're okay. Let's just kind of talk about it, and I'll talk you through it, and my wife is, we talked about a therapist. And so, I try to be a little bit of a therapist. I also used to be a bartender, maybe, which is an even more important skill, and just try to kind of get them to be a little bit more open-minded. But I think that's the part that is the most challenging, is the communication. And that's even within our own community. I think communicating about technologies and the things, we really need to be as precise and simple in that, so that we can communicate the most effectively. And I think sometimes I see questions on the forums where people just kind of like, blah, 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 and it's like, okay, we're going to have to ask you 10 questions to find out what you're even asking. So if you're new, learning to communicate simply and clearly and effectively is a great skill that you will then be able to utilize with your clients. Right. And that's really the most important.
Yeah. And people, I think the average consumer, a lot of times really can underestimate the amount of time it takes to do some of these projects, right? Or they think how many times, oh, I have a few hundred photos. right? And then you, when they bring you like, how many times, or I have maybe I have 1,000, and then you do the inventory and no, you have like 7,500 photos, or
Yeah.
it's not uncommon.
The biggest job I had, I think it was several million, and it was a little boasting here, but it was the Robert Kennedy Photo Archive. And I got to work with one of his sons, not the one who's running for president. And we started out with several million photos and got it down to like 280,000, which was like, woo, success. But yeah, you're dealing with massive, massive amounts of numbers, but you see a lot of incredible things too.
Yeah, you really, yep, you do. So another question I asked is, so if you were just to members, people that are listening, thinking they're just getting started, what advice would you give to somebody who's just thinking, do I want to do this? And what would Peter tell me how would he suggest getting started?
Well, just to kind of circle back, think
Yeah.
about being a problem solver. Don't feel like you have to learn everything. I think, we get excited about the potential of what we can do in this field. We all come from very kind of different fields. Many of us come from photography. A lot of people came from scrapbooking, right? But whatever our experience is, we have to kind of draw on that, I think, initially, because we have confidence because we have that experience, and then kind of combine it with what our passion is and what we'd like to do, and then figure out the steps to kind of get there. Right. And in that process, look at how you can market that skill. So if I'm going to do this, this, and this, who's going to be my potential client? And identify them. And when you identify your clients, then you can start to construct a marketing plan to those clients. And, it's a very hit and miss thing, but, it is essential to think about all of this together. I had an old business mentor, and he always used to kind of say, your marketing is your business, right? You do this thing, and that's your skill or that's your product, but your business is your marketing. And, I think to a great extent that's true. And, we all want to just kind of do the fun stuff, and the marketing isn't the fun stuff necessarily, but it can be creative. But I think you have to incorporate the marketing in terms of what you're going to be doing so that you understand who you're servicing. For instance, like when I had that first client, they were up in what I call the hills of Brentwood, and the hills in Los Angeles are where the wealthy people live. And I am never considered myself in that class, but I realized like those are the people who have the money. How do you reach them? Well, I couldn't reach them like they're not coming down to the library to watch my scanning, demo. They're not going to respond because they're a little bit more insulated. So I had to be a little creative, and I realized like I can't reach them directly, but I can maybe reach the people who already service them. So I found estate managers and lawyer and people who are already servicing them who might be able to then kind of like refer me. So that was, a marketing strategy that I employed, which paid off pretty well. And I got to work with some amazing clients. But again, the marketing kind of follows the clientele and the skill, and putting it all together and spending time kind of working out a marketing plan, I think is really critical.
All right. So the last two questions before we go to Q&A. So if you have questions, go ahead. I see some people are asking some different questions. Drop it in the chat, and we'll see what there's there's a question about Mylio, which is unrelated to this, but the what do you think the state of the industry is? So what do you think the future is? And I think, Peter, a lot of us can really riff on this and have a good time talking about it. I think and I think you've identified some key areas with your interest in legacy work and things like that. But what would you say, in what you've seen evolve since you've been a member, from the early days too, how it's changed so much?
Yeah. It's funny, like I make this joke, if I people didn't understand what we did, and it required really an explanation to, an elevator pitch that was challenging. And now, it's like you can go to a party and it's like, like you're a doctor, find out what you do. And it's like everyone, oh, I need, can you do this? Tell me about this. So, the need is there. And Rob understands in the photography field, it was a shrinking field affected by many different factors, digital and crowdsourcing and so forth. What I think is really incredible about what we do is there are infinite possibilities. We are in a growth industry, and I think that's really important to understand. So, we there's no limit to what we can do and where we can take it. And that's what I find the most kind of challenging in a good way for me is like, what's next? What's coming? Where are the needs going to be, right? So, we did photo organizing and, we labored manually, and now it's becoming a little bit of an automated, not a little bit, a lot of an automated process. So we can see that maybe doing some of the things we did is going to be shifting, and how to identify that. And of course, a lot of it's guesswork, but we can take educated guesses, but anticipating and trying to kind of see where the needs are going to be. And I think that's really exciting because, we're kind of at the cutting edge and forefront of a huge industry that's just growing, almost as fast as people's photo collections, right? So understanding that there is this a lot, this kind of unlimited landscape to what we can do, that final frontier, kind of Star Trekky, like find out what's going to be needed and kind of be passionate and curious, be curious about what's out there and see what's coming next. Now, I legacy is because I think I noticed that it was something people were really interested in. And you posted that article about, the digital black hole. And, you look at Ken Burns documentaries and they relied on letters, documents, photos. How's that going to be told? So I was really interested, how are stories going to be told in the future? And how are we going to preserve those items that we need? So to me, legacy was just kind of a natural segue to kind of incorporate a lot of the skills I had, but a lot of the curiosities and interests that I had as well. So that's what kind of led to that. And I'm really kind of excited about where I am. And it's also, I'm at the age where I want to kind of preserve my legacy. And so, as with many of the things we do in this industry, we kind of practice on ourselves and then like, okay, I think I can do it. Let me bring it out to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's so many different directions, and we just see it. And I changed that name to the photo managers about 4 or 5 years ago, kind of anticipating that photo organizing. I didn't know that, AI and geotag and all those things would speed up the process. But sometimes I wish we keep the word photo in there, but really when I talk to people too, I'll say it's photos, videos, meaningful memorabilia, right? It's letters, it's kids' artwork, it's old home movies on outdated digital formats, but now it's people shoot so much video and there's a million different ways that it's all going. And so it's a much bigger field. Last question before we go is, how has being a member of the Photo Managers been helpful for you as being in this profession?
I think just like I said, I was a photographer and I watched my photo agency kind of implode because of things I couldn't control. I felt I was in a shrinking industry, and then to kind of then pivot and be in an industry that was growing, to me, it was really life-changing in many ways. I've always thought in terms of photography, and now, I talk to a lot of photographers and they're kind of nervous. Well, they're very nervous. And, so I tell them what I'm doing, and some get excited, some don't. But, the understanding is that, we can take these skills and kind of really have value for our experience and be able to do that. I've been an instructor for years, And that's kind of what I'm doing more of these days. I'm doing less hands-on photo organizing, although I do get jobs and I do scan. But for me, I love teaching. I'm planning a book. I teach photography. I teach obviously photo organizing. And so for me, I'm at the stage of my life where that's where my passion lies and where I want to kind of move forward with. So.
Great. Well, we love your Peter's a great member. Our members really enjoy his education and things like that. So, all right. So let's go to some questions. Let me go back here to the somebody. I think that Tina's question was answered. She said, "How many people don't feel they need to do a lot of marketing?" I think Susan has a good answer. She said, "I don't think we'll ever stop marketing." Because you're always going to have to bring in new clients, right? A lot of our members, actually, we have an amazing study, which we're getting ready to release, that we did a survey and that talks about that. But actually, a significant number of our members do have repeat customers. I would say, Peter, have you found that too? Repeat customers, you are getting new customers a lot, but a lot of customers, once they form a relationship with you, life keeps happening and different things come up. And have you found that experience with repeat customers?
Yeah, and it all is born out of trust. So when you work with a client and you give them value and you give them something that, has meaning to them, they trust you. And so when they need help, they turn to somebody they trust. I think it's really that simple.
Tina also questioned, Peter, how many different client projects would you say that you've handled at the same time, and how do you keep them separate?
Yeah, I don't do big photo organizing jobs. That last big one I did was the Kennedy one, and I think my head exploded, and I was like, okay. But back in the day, I used to handle sometimes 3, 4, 5 big digital photo organizing jobs. And I found that I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning just a little too often and just kind of worrying. And like, there's so many things that you can figure out. Did I do this right? Did I do that right? So, I advise finding what your comfort level is, whatever your brain can handle, and don't overdo it because it can affect the work, and we're all kind of different. So whatever that balance, that harmony
There is
is.
a big, John Spear, I don't know if you know, he had that whiteboard he posted on the Facebook page, probably had 50. He had this big, all the clients, and then he had a whiteboard. So then he had where they were in the process. But Tina, we do a lot of training about that too. It's also, some members, members here can answer you. I know we have members on the call here, how many jobs they're working on, but it's definitely finding those workflows and then documenting your process so that you have a way of keeping track of it.
I was just going to say, I had this guy who used to talk, he was in sales, and he said, you do big cans and you do little cans. Big cans, take on maybe a couple of big projects, but then have a lot of little ones in there. So, that way you're not overwhelming yourself, but there's always, something going on.
And a good thing to keep in mind too is people, a lot of times they haven't done, this is a project they've been wanting to do, they haven't got to. So unless there's like a wedding coming up or a graduation or, a specific time, so a lot of people can wait. I know one of our members, Allison, just told me she picked up her biggest job she's ever gotten this weekend. And the client brought everything from New York to Chicago where she is, and she's going on vacation. And she said, I will not be able to start this till October 1st. And the client was, that's good. I'm fine with that. So that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Got her deposit. She got a significant deposit, and she won't start that project till October 1st. So Lisa asks, who are the best networking partners to net with to grow business for referrals for photo managers, and that also that photo managers can refer as well?
You mean like other?
You started mentioning, I think you mentioned, I would say residential organizers, you mentioned estate planners. Who are some of the people that you have partnered with that you have found can be networking partners for you?
So, I just remembered the first client I got, the one I thought it was through my website, but actually I just remembered I looked up all the family photographers in my area, and I contacted them and I said, this is what I do. And your high-end clients, if they need their photos organized, refer them to me, and I'll give you a referral fee. And that's exactly what happened. I forgot about that. So, you know, you have to look around your community, but you know, the wealthy high-end clients in my area often hire photographers to do like yearly photo shoots of the family, you know, and so forth. And so I contacted them, and that was very effective. So just
Yeah,
thought,
that's a great idea. I don't know if we've talked about that much before, but definitely executors, you know, state executors,
Yeah.
residential organizers who do homes and, you know, closets and things like that, but aren't
Yes.
interested in doing photos a lot of times. Senior move managers, there's a big movement where these are professionals who help people downsize from their homes. That's another big one. So there's a lot of different companies
Yeah.
out there. Nancy wanted to know, can you share your typical schedule and how you do work-life balance? So, and I think some other members in here might be able to answer that too, but you know,
Yeah, I don't, you know, since I don't take on these big projects like I used to,
I guess when you were taking,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wish I could give you a clear answer on that. Uh, I kind of did what's in front of me, and I probably looking back should have been a little bit more organized, which is a little ironic, I guess. I don't know how to answer that question. I try to manage. This is something I do, and this is just I have a day timer. I am Rob probably knows this. I have a day timer, and I have a digital calendar, but I have this, and it's like one day has all the hours, stuff to do, and the most effective way that I can work is when I literally go from 9 to 11, I'm going to do this. From 11 to 12, I'm going to answer correspondence. There you go. And, you know, just to organize my day so that I'm not in constant reaction mode. I think that can really kind of be problematic, especially when we're inundated with texts and emails and this and that, is to literally organize your day so that you're just not in reaction mode. And when I do this, when I organize my day well, I have really efficient, effective work days. And when I'm on just kind of reaction mode, I don't. I hope that
Yeah,
helps.
that's a good, I use a timer a lot.
Yeah,
I have my
yeah,
day
yeah.
scale, you know, and I say I'm from, you know, especially I call it quiet or thinking time. And I schedule that into my calendar. All right, let's see. We're not going to get into the whole Mylio. There's a lot about Mylio, but we do a lot of training on Mylio. We have a great relationship with them. So that's something to look for at a different time. Also look at our YouTube channel. We have past things on that. Anna wants to know, does getting certified teach you how to organize digital photos? The answer is no. Certification doesn't teach you. Okay, somebody answered that too. Yeah, it is. We decided certification is to teach you best practices. And also Peter's course, the basics of digital organizing, is going to teach you about file size. It's going to teach you about resolution. It's going to teach you like the core learning skills that Peter noticed that people didn't really have. He had as a photographer. Then digital organizing itself, and I think Susan's doing a good job there. And it, you know, start with the ones that that you get, and then it depends on what clients you have. If some of our members have decided, you know, they love the Apple ecosystem, they're only going to want to really work with clients in Apple. Then I would learn how to really organize and manage a client's photos in the Apple photo organizing system. So you're going to pick your it's hard to know right off the bat, I think, which one that you want. So
Can I just add something?
yeah, go ahead, please do. Yep.
You know, one of the other reasons I got into legacy work is that, you know, getting organized for organized sake didn't really kind of make sense to me after a while. And so if you're new, one of the things I would incorporate into your thinking and planning is to think about goals, like what's the long range, what's the end game of this? You know, workflow, be it photography or anything, is almost something that you start with at the end. In other words, where do I want to go? And when you figure out where you want to go, you can figure out how to get there. And if you're new, thinking just kind of in those terms about like, where do you want to go? It's the first question I ask my clients is, what do you want to do what do you like to do with your photos? Okay, I'll get you there. And then that informs everything before it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and then somebody asked a question like, how do they get started with their first client? And I think a lot of times I tell people another advice we tend to give is learn what you need to know when you get that first client, because you're going to anticipate that your first
Right.
client is going to be somebody who wants to have their digital photos organized, when all of a sudden the first client that contacts you has boxes of photos and they need and slides and they need them scanned, and you're thinking one way, and then you decide, well, do you want to do that work too? That's another option. So we always say, do what you love and outsource the rest. And so it takes a while to know what you love, but there are lots of professionals who will do that for you. For example, I use my son Joshua, who lives here in town, as an example. He loves scanning, and he loves working with older clients. It just has become a real passion of his. Home movie conversion. He doesn't love digital photo organizing. He can do it, but he's found another member that's in Florida, and so they've come up with a great relationship, and he outsources his digital photo organizing to her. So he's the project manager. He has the connection with the client and things, but he's able to pass that on to somebody else. And many of our members do that with each other. They'll do the pieces that they really like. Maybe they love making photo books, but they don't want to do scanning, or they don't want to do home movie conversion, which we don't recommend everybody do home movie conversion. But when you're meeting with a client and they're bringing you all of their things, they're going to have outdated media formats and things like that. So that's just hopefully some advice on that. Let's see what other questions we have come in here. Oh, well, Peter's done a course on this. It's pretty inexpensive in the Photo Manager Academy. What do you think is the best software for removing duplicates? She's heard a lot of good things about Duplicate Cleaner 5 and Photo Sweeper.
Yeah, I think that's a Windows and Mac thing. So Photo Sweeper is the course I did on, and I think it's a great, really effective deduping app for Mac. The other one I've never used. I can't speak to it, but I've heard, they both require a bit of a learning curve. And it's not even just the functionality of the deduping software. You have to develop a strategy for deduping, because you can't just kind of press a button and think it's going to work. You have to kind of understand that you're going to have to do several passes and then figure out the best and the most effective strategy to kind of be to remove the most dupes. And that's what the course goes through. And again, that comes up under problem solving. So.
Allison, you don't like doing the financial bookkeeping. Do you have someone else manage it for you? And do you use Quicken, or what kind of software do you use?
I do it myself. I used to have an S Corp, which was like nightmarishly complicated bookkeeping, but now I'm pretty simple. So I just do it myself. I don't use Quicken, don't like Quicken. I just kind of use I use Wave a little bit, and
Yep.
I use just my online banking. So I'm simplified these days.
And then if just for somebody that people are asking like questions about, what digital photo organizing software would you recommend if somebody was just going to pick one to learn, they wanted to start with something, what would you recommend they start with?
Well, Josh is going to hate me, but Adobe Lightroom is what I've worked with for years since it was developed. And I have a lot of clients. A lot of the work I do is I actually have a lot of one-to-one Lightroom clients. I think it works really well from a manual organizing perspective. It just does. And again, it also requires a bit of a learning curve. Apple Photos is amazing, and a lot of, I think there's a lot to be said about just dumping everything into Apple Photos and let it organize it, and it has a deduping component. And if you kind of look at my legacy course, I think we have such giant, archives and libraries that organizing it in the traditional way almost doesn't make sense. The idea is like to just dump it into a database like Apple Photos, and then extract the important stuff, which I call a legacy collection, and organize that locally and manually. And that's the stuff you preserve. And you tend to go back to those pictures over and over and over again. 90% of the pictures we take, I don't think we ever look at again once we take them. So
Yeah. Russell asks, if I do small jobs that are paid for, friends just to get my feet wet? At what point do I need to actually go through the stages to create my business from a legal standpoint? In my opinion, Russell, for that is when you're getting far enough in where you're committed to this as a business, you do, then at that point you would want to become my opinion, you'd want to become an LLC so that that you're not at legal risk to anything that happens. The LLC itself is every state has different rules, but SCORE, SCORE is a free service by the Small Business Association. Those are retired business folks, so not all retired actually anymore, who give you one-on-one support on how to start a small business, and will go through all of the financial pieces and every part of that. And they're in every town and city just about in the country. So there's a lot of support for small businesses in today. So I would definitely contact also, or your town, or maybe your local universities or colleges for entrepreneurs and things like that. So definitely make sure that you access all the resources that are out there. And again, the photo managers we have as part of our basic course, we also have how to get your business started. It's everything that because we've helped people for so many years getting started, that it's how do you set up invoicing? How do you find clients? What does your invoice look like? All of those pieces, we also include all that in their training. Bennett wants to know if there's a difference between duplication and similar photos. For example, if I do a burst and I just want to keep one or two of the best photos.
Yeah. There's exact duplicates. Then there's kind of duplicates that you have superior dupes. They're the same image, but one is maybe larger or has metadata. And then you have similars. So there's kind of three categories of that. Similars can be the toughest because you're looking for the little micro differences between them. And, that just requires some patience and a good eye. And so I hope that answers it.
All right. I think that's the end of the questions, that we can start getting into all the technical things. Something new that we have that we're getting ready to do, if some members will be new to it, we're doing Ask Us Anything. We've asked for volunteers of our experienced members to sit on panels, and we have members that can come in. We're going to be setting up some times where, it's going to be ask me anything kind of questions, because there's such a wealth of information and there's so many different situations that come up, which is really what makes the organization itself and all the members such a wonderful group. So Peter, it's always a pleasure to learn from you. You're a great speaker and a great teacher. Like Susan said, she's a member, your Photo Sweeper training comes in handy. We'd love to welcome you to the Photo Managers. You can join by going to our website. We also have what we call Photo Manager in Training for people who want to get their feet wet first, maybe just get their own photos organized. It's a one-year program. You can upgrade at any point to becoming a full professional. We have an annual educational conference. It'll be in San Diego in April. You definitely should start planning and thinking about that. Peter's always an instructor at our conferences. And it's a wonderful chance to we have over 20 amazing breakouts usually every year, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you again for your time, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and those that have been answering in the chat. And this will be up on YouTube. And if you want to hear from other past, people are still coming in, it's a little late. If you want to hear from learn from other photo managers, go ahead and look at all the different photo managers that we've done these interviews with. It's always a different conversation. Each person comes with very different backgrounds. So again, thanks everybody for your time. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Kathy. Enjoy your birthday.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.